Hey, what's up, guys? Morning Man here. I want to announce, real quick announcement that the MGTOW World Summit, next one is coming up in May 24th, 25th, 26th here in Bangkok. It's just to remind anybody who hasn't been here before, it's very easy to come to Thailand. It is the easiest city in the world to visit, I would say. I've been all over the world, and I would say this is the easiest. And it also is the number one tourist destination. So, the infrastructure is here. You don't need to worry, basically. Now, of course, you want to plan well. And I would say the number one thing, if you're interested in coming, go ahead and buy your plane ticket first, get your flight, and come to any airport in Bangkok. Doesn't matter. And so 24th, 25th, 26th, and there'll be some guys hanging around. So if you're going to be around for more time, that would be good, probably more fun. And also jet lag. So jet lag is about 7 days where you don't feel that great. So if you don't have much time, a lot of guys just come in for the event and they fly back home. For myself, I like to take longer trips. So if you can organize it so that your mind is like super clear when you get here, I'd say show up about a week before. I'm around. roninmigtow@gmail.com is my email, and I will help you to navigate the situation. I would say one thing I would say, try to get a flight that lands either in the morning, daytime, or early evening before 10 o'clock. And that just makes it a little bit easier because then you can take the public transportation from the airport. So you don't have to negotiate with taxis. There's no, you know what I mean? You don't have to go through all that stuff. So it makes it easier and also cheaper and very fast. And you don't have to worry about traffic and stuff like that. So there's a lot of traffic in Bangkok. So if you can avoid it, which I totally avoid it completely, it doesn't affect me in any way. And so I'll try to help you with these kind of things that to me are important, right? So I want you to have a great trip, meet a lot of guys, and also learn a lot about yourself and get new tools and new strategies for seeing how your mindset is and fixing things. I mean, there's many reasons why people come. There's so many reasons why people attend. Just to hang out with friends, to learn new things, to see Thailand, to laugh, to be around guys that understand. There's just a million reasons. So, and if you have a topic that you really want to talk about and you have experience with it, let me know. And we often have people join in. So you can also provide content if you have something you really like, a key aspect, especially something that hasn't been talked about. That would be fucking awesome. All right, so either way, so it's $300. So I'll put the link below. So basically register and get a cheap flight to Bangkok anytime around May 23rd, 24th, 26th. 24th, 25th, 26th, sorry, 24th. So today I want to talk about why I think forced gender diversity is a very bad idea for positions of power. Okay, now I say positions of power, but I don't believe that there is such a thing. I think it's a made up term. And a lot of terms these days, they're made up. They're not real. They're just kind of, I'm not saying they don't have any basis in reality. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that they don't, They're made up for an agenda, okay? There is some truth to them, but they're made up to create a mindset or a kind of an easy way to do something. So always when you see a new word, positions of power, that came up recently, right? Whenever you see something like this, you always think to yourself, wait a second, positions of power. I never heard that before. There was like management positions, there's positions on a board. You could be a board of directors member, you could be a CEO, you could have different titles, right? But there was nothing such thing as positions of power. And I think the reason why, and this is where I can, as a headhunter, I was a recruiter, and a lot of people don't really know what that means, which is fine. I'll just give you a basic rundown. Is a recruiter is a highly paid person whose job, the reason why they're highly paid is because they're trying to find people that are very difficult to find and very important for a company. So the people that I was paid to find were basically positions of power, because it makes no sense to pay a recruiter the amount of money, like we would get paid like 35% of the guy's yearly salary. So if the guy made, let's say he was average guy, he made $100,000, I'd get $25,000 or more, $30,000, depending on the percentages, and there was different things. Sometimes there were signing bonuses, sometimes there was retainers and things that made it even more profitable. But essentially, I'd get as much as $35,000 for just an average guy. Now, why would they pay me so much? The reason why they paid me was because it is extremely difficult to find the right person for a really strategic position in a company. So, one of the positions that I was asked to do, which I won't say the company name, I was asked to, when one of the world's largest corporations was making a digital division. So they wanted to start to make like consumer products. And so they asked me to find the head of digital devices for them. And I had to sign a bunch of non-disclosure agreements and everything. And so my job was to go find that person. Now, why would they not just put a job ad in the newspaper? The reason is because the company was a software company. So devices were a whole new. It's important to understand why these things are so difficult, because this is what the devil is in the details, guys. This is why these board positions, it's so important not to fuck with them. This is my basic thesis here, is that board positions, CEO positions, are very. They look from the outside like a general thing, like just basically you could change them, like it's not a problem. That is the mindset. Okay, let me give you the mindset. The mindset of a lot of people that are trying to get diversity in boards is, and I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just gonna, like, how my episodes are. Like, I get in deep, right? I understand. Okay, guys are getting paid well. It doesn't look fair. Like, for example, a CEO might make 367 times what a worker makes. This doesn't hit human beings as fair. You know what I mean? We don't feel like, oh, that makes sense. There's a lot of things that when you first see them, when you first read them, you're like, your gut reaction is not good, right? And this is not a small thing, because when you have that reaction, humans are emotional creatures. So a lot of times you decide to buy a truck, for example, because you see a guy in a truck with a very hot girl, and your mind is like, fuck, I want a hot girl to blow me in that truck, and then you're like, I'm gonna get that truck, but your emotions drive your buying decisions. Okay, that is like proved beyond any. That's why advertising exists. Okay, that's why it's so profitable, is because people don't believe it, but actually emotions drive your decisions. The way your decisions are made is two things: emotions first, and then you come up with a logical reason to explain it to people, or to your wife, or to yourself, or whatever. And those two things. So good advertising gets you with emotion first, and then it gives you logical reasons why. So you might say, oh, the engine is 8-cylinder, it's the most powerful V8 in the world, and it is a new technology and has this new VTEC or whatever, has got this new it's got this new thing that blows minds, and it's going to be hybrid, or whatever. You come up with all these reasons, and it has this new material on the bed. And now all these things are important, don't get me wrong. These innovations affect the attractiveness of that product, but essentially what you're doing, you can see, is you've already made a decision, and now you are trying to basically give yourself an excuse to do it, right? It's kind of like people like myself who eat chocolate. Now, I eat chocolate almost every day, right? And I'm trying not to, actually. I try not to eat so much sugar, but I just love chocolate. Like, I don't drink, I don't do drugs, I don't like I don't do a lot. I don't have a lot of like bad habits that most guys have, but chocolate, I just fucking chocolate's tough. But here's the way my mindset is. So now I want chocolate, so emotionally, right? And so what I do is I read a study that says chocolate is good for you. And chocolate is like one of the few like things in the world that, all countries have accepted chocolate, and this shows that people inherently know, even before science, before there was a logical reason, they know that it's good for their body, and people gravitate. So my mind, I read all these things, And so in my mind I say, there's some good parts of chocolate. Chocolate's kind of healthy, like cacao and everything, and percentages and this and that. But the truth is that there's tons of sugar in there. There's tons of saturated fats that are terrible for me. And logically I know that, but you can see where my mind goes. So I'm not above this. You're not above this. We are all like this. Okay, so when I say that a CEO seems to be overpaid and that affects you in the gut, even as a businessman, even if you're very pro-business and in CEOs and everything, there's still a part of you that is like, why do they make so much? Okay, so that kind of stuff is a problem, because this shit is serious, right? You say, okay, and so what the mindset is that basically these guys are overpaid, okay? And there's also another mindset, is that board members, CEOs are somewhat, you can tell me what you think about this. I think there's a feeling in the modern kind of press or the movement to create gender diversity in boards. There's a feeling that these people are not chosen based on there's an underlying assumption that they're chosen based on arbitrary things. So like race, So for example, a white guy might get chosen in America because white is a majority, right? And in Africa, black guy is going to get chosen because he is in the majority. So there's going to be in China, you're going to see Chinese guys and Chinese women getting chosen for boards. And so you might think, well, that's racism. That's based on skin color. That's not right. Now, the interesting thing for me is nobody fights for gender diversity in China or Japan, Malaysia, Thailand, Africa, South America. It's only in America. Like there's this like huge thing that we need gender diverse boards. Nobody talks about it on Tencent. Nobody is protesting Alibaba, any of these companies. That's when you can, whenever you see these discrepancies. In other words, if something's good here, it's good there. Okay? There's no question. If drinking water, hydrating you is good in America, it's good to drink water in China. Okay? It's just the same, right? And if diversity creates like massive value, then you would want to, and if not diversity shows deep-seated racism and evil, really, because what you're doing is the premise or the thinking is that well-meaning good people that are better prepared to be board members are being neglected, and lesser talented people are being chosen because of these arbitrary things, not because of like logical, rational business reasons. But then doesn't work in China, doesn't work in Japan, doesn't work anywhere else really. It only works in these countries where people are, trying to get. And this brings to my second point. So the interesting thing about the mindset of the diversity in boards and the whole movement right now to change board members as if they're like Lego parts. They're just like, hey, let's just change the board members. The board members are the positions of power are this. Let's just change them. We need to, California enacted a law recently that there must be female board members, but that must be is one thing. But in reality, there's a guy who worked his ass off that deserves that job, in my mind, and he's going to be he's going to be neglected, and there'll be somebody else brought in. And if you don't believe that, you don't understand how companies work. And I'm going to go into the detail in this one here. And this is really true, guys. I am serious. And there are major implications that will affect you. They will affect your wallet. They will affect your power, your life. And it's very important to understand. I'm telling you, this is very, very important. Let me tell you why. Okay, board members and CEOs. Actually, there's so many aspects to this. I don't even know where to start. Let me talk about one thing first. Is that there are a lot of studies mostly by consulting companies like McKinsey, and they are saying that diversity creates value in companies. Now, what's interesting about these studies is they're not peer reviewed. there's only been a couple of peer-reviewed studies, and there's a lot of data. Okay, it's not like this is not like difficult to find data on this one. There's a lot of data because companies are forced by the SEC, especially public companies, to report every single piece of data that exists, right? And so one of the most painful things, one of my friends took his company public. He took two companies public, one in Japan, one in China. This is one of my very good friends. And he told me it's just like a nightmare. Like, he wishes he wouldn't have even taken a second company public because it's so much scrutiny. It's like so much paperwork, and it takes him off his business. And he could have found private investors to do the same thing, to invest in the company instead of shareholders. So there's many ways to skin a cat, right? But there's a lot of data, and that data can be studied. Okay, so you can see if a company made more money or less money after XYZ happened. The dates are there, the profits there, the market share is there. You know what I mean? The amount per, I forgot the word right now, but like basically how much each person buys every year, the recurring revenue and profits. All this stuff is absolutely calculated too. The minor, because of the IRS too, right? So easy to find. So there is a peer-reviewed study, and interestingly enough, the only peer-reviewed study I've ever read, and I can try to. I don't want to put the link below because YouTube hates links below, but I'll give you a hint of where it is. You can find it. It said that replacing board members with women didn't have that big of an effect either way. So it wasn't like catastrophic when it's done. So let's say there was a man who was ready to, his career, he had matured and he was ready to be a board member, but there was an arbitrary decision, but from the outside, which is the public, okay, which is not accountable, by the way, for these. Whenever there's like somebody forced to be in a board, in every case there's accountability. That's the whole point of the board. But when the public comes in from the outside and the lawmakers, this is the one exception where there's no accountability. Like, hey, that didn't work, right? That's one of the things that board's job is. There's two things. Job is to make decisions, okay, and then to see that they're implemented, and then to see if it worked. That's basically what the board does. So they're like, okay, last year we decided, we're going to do this. Now, what did we do? How did it go? What happened? Let's see the numbers, And then, basically what should we do now? Did it work, right? And so boards do that. But when you bring in, so the ecosystem surrounding these quote unquote positions of power is much more complex than people appreciate. And the reason why things are the way they are is much more complex than anybody appreciates who's not on a board, who's never served on a board, who doesn't have friends on boards, who doesn't understand how these things operate. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, how would you know, right? There's no way to know. A lot of guys listening here, you don't have any friends on the board. You're just listening thinking, okay, that's interesting, right? I want to get you a very balanced perspective and also insights based on real things. Like I say, the devil is in the details with all these things. So the biggest peer-reviewed study of forced board members essentially being sabotaged and new people replacing them is that there isn't that big of an effect. As far as I read, there's a slight negative effect, but it wasn't like as big as I thought it would be. And it's interesting because I started thinking about that. Like, that's very interesting because that in itself would be used as nobody wants to talk about that actually. They want to quote the very unscientific studies that say when you change the board members to women, you all of a sudden make insane money. Those are actually not true. Those studies are not peer reviewed. Whenever you go in deep on the data, they don't happen. Okay, it's not true. And so, what could have been a better narrative for the movement would be there isn't that big a difference. Maybe a slight negative, maybe a slight positive in some cases, but it's not really that big a difference. So they could have said, the movement could have said from the beginning is like, hey, if it doesn't matter that much, let's just do it because it's good for humanity. That would have been a pretty good argument. I would have probably bought that one. But I started thinking about it more. And, really, the whole thing is about fairness, right? We're talking about fairness, right? What is fucking fair? And is it fair, right? So is it fair that there's a bunch of white guys on boards in countries with white majorities? Is it fair? And I always say this, like, Chinese board is all, Chinese people. Although China is a very diverse country. I don't know if people realize that. China has a huge white population. And they always have, because they're on the border of Russia. They're on the border of Pakistan. They're on the border. Sorry, not the border. I'm sorry, Pakistan. Either way, it's like Middle East. That you get a lot of variety over there, right? I've traveled out there. I've gone through the desert. One of my long-term girlfriends who was around in China, she was from that area. So I actually went out there a lot, and I was amazed at the diversity, like blue eyes and blonde hair, and I couldn't believe it. I was like shocked, And a lot of people, even if you live in Beijing or Shanghai, you don't really appreciate the variety China has. So these people, there's nothing wrong with these. These people are valuable citizens. Now they get fucked over, which is very interesting, and nobody talks about it. They get very fucked over. One of my friends had a Chinese teacher who was blonde from that area, and he thought it was hilarious. He just thought it was funny. And she was Chinese native speaker, so he had her as a teacher, and quite funny. But either way, there's diversity everywhere. Okay, Japan was originally Caucasian. The very first people in Japan were the Ainu. And they are closest resembled to the Alaskans kind of thing. They got the big black beards, They don't look Asian at all. In fact, if you go to the oldest museum in Japan, the very oldest museum, history museum, I forget the name of it, but it's out in the peninsula towards Shirahama from Osaka, and it's near, what's the name of that temple? We went out there. Oh gosh, let me think. I can't think of it right now. But there's like history museums out there where they have the original Japanese history. And I went to these museums, and it was very interesting because the oldest eating utensil in Japan, and this is an absolute fact, you can look it up, is a fork and knife. Essentially, it's a china. It's made from what do you call it? Pottery, and it's like two prongs, and it's very crooked and very old, obviously, and a spoon. And that's because the original people in Japan were the Ainu. And then the Chinese came over by boat or shipwreck or whatever it was, and then slowly, starting from the south, pushed the Ainu out of their own country. Now they are it's like a charade. It's almost like in the old days when you had the Indians like whooping around and like you had people paying money to watch them, act Indian or whatever, like make Indian noises. That's kind of the level that the Ainu got pushed into. Now, recently there's been a movement in Japan to give respect to the Ainu, and there's been a change. But I don't think people outside really realize, like Americans don't realize the diversity in other countries and the complexity of migration and races. It's very interesting to study, and the more you know, the less you hate. That is my very strong opinion about life. The more you know about history, the more you know about people, the more you know about motivations, the more you know about violence, the more about wars. You see the complexity of life, and you can't hate. It's like you see yourself in everything. You see other people in yourself. You see that history is presented a certain way for an agenda, for whatever reason, and you find yourself like you don't want to get trapped in an agenda of somebody else, a mind agenda of somebody else, right? You want to have a balanced view, right? So back to the board's forced diversity. Okay, so what is a CEO? Let's just go quickly. Well, what is a board of directors? It's basically like their main job is to make decisions. Okay, one of their things is like simplicity. So you don't have time. There's only a few board meetings a year. You don't have much time to talk and present. You have to have it narrowed down. Here's the way it is. X, Y, Z. Here's what I think. Here's what I think we should do. Here's the problem, and here's the opportunity, and here's what we should do. You have to, and that's the board member's responsibility. You don't get a lot of time to present at these meetings. They're very short, and so the people that are part of these members are very important to the company. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that there is not racism in the world, and that I'm not saying that some CEOs in history or board members would be chosen because of racial characteristics. Okay, this is a reality. Okay, it's an unfortunate reality, is that people can be racist, and it's just part of the system. And the problem is when you take that and you say, okay, let's just dismantle this complex structure that evolved because it's, quote unquote not fair, and let's just change it. Let's just do it, man. Let's just get it done. Let's make diversity ourselves. And again, I would say, not again, I haven't said this yet, but actually I don't mind. I like diversity. I spent my life traveling. I've spent my life overseas, and I've lived in so many countries. I speak fluent Chinese and Japanese. I mean, I really enjoy other countries and other cultures, and everybody knows that maybe I'm the one MGTOW creator that doesn't, have any resentment against women. I have good relationships with my friends, but why would I be against diversity, right? It doesn't make sense, right? Okay, the reason why is because I understand the way boards are chosen and the way things operate. Let me give you a few examples. Okay, the idea that board members are chosen arbitrarily and that the standard procedure is racism or old boys network that's bunk. That is insanity. It really is. That's total insanity. It's the people are chosen for the history of their work experience, and when a board member changes, it changes everything. Like recently, like just announced today that I think 5 or 6 board members are gonna leave Tesla, and if you look deeper into that, why did they leave? They were all friends with Elon Musk. They had long-term experience with Elon Musk, so something's going on. This incredibly complex ecosystem is changing, and you have to get into the details, because when boards change, sometimes it means a company's going downhill. Sometimes it means there's a power struggle. Sometimes it means, and the power struggle is not power like a gender diversity group would think. Power could be like, for example, if one group is, let's say at Walmart, one of the struggles they've had is they're an offline retailer, and that Amazon is eating their lunch in some ways. So, and same with a lot of the other retailers. And so there's a movement inside of Walmart to compete with Amazon and to do online sales. So that group that believes that online sales are the future and that Walmart has the good locations to present is one group. And there's another group that says, hey, we're doing fine. We're doing what we're doing. It's fine. We got big parking lots. Everybody can get there very fast. People like to touch things, see things. Spending our money on technology means changing the culture of the company. Programmers, Silicon Valley, they're very expensive. There's risk involved, and all this stuff is true, right? But now is it worth it? That's that question, right? But these two groups would have a power struggle, because should you focus a company like Walmart on online sales and start to increase, pick up deliveries from online sales at parking lots, give what Walmart's doing now is they have spaces in the front that you don't have to walk very far. You can just park in the front in this order delivery section, and the guy will bring the stuff out to your car. Is this the future for Walmart? Is this profitable? Are the Walmart consumers the type that are going to buy? Is the stuff they're going to buy profitable? There's so many issues, and those two groups are going to battle it out. Now that's a power struggle. In the end, it's a power struggle between people, but it's based on a very real challenge that the company's facing. It's not a challenge. It's not a power struggle in the sense of just two crazy people like fighting each other for power. There's a reason for that. There's a reason, and each person has different experience. So those different board members, some people maybe they worked at something with a more online presence, and they're thinking like, hey, I see the numbers, right? I see the big data. I see the future, and retail shops are closing. Walmart has a lot of things they don't realize that they have that are good things for online retails, and that we could transform this into a powerhouse, and they're trying to do that. Now, if that movement fails, those guys will all leave. That's what happens. These boards change, right, based on the direction of the company. So when you change a board member, you're not, the idea that they're like Lego pieces, okay, that you can just change, and even the idea that a board member, like just randomly changing a board member, is something that if it doesn't affect the profit either way, it should be done. I really question that. I don't agree with that, and here's the reason. Okay, let's look at let's say the American sprinters in the 100-meter dash. This tends to be a very non-diverse group, right? There's an over emphasis on African Americans. Now, and if you assumed these people were chosen, kind of racist and randomly, you would say, let's say you didn't know. Let's just say you didn't know, right? You saw that there was these sprinters and they were all one color, and then you said, hey, well, there's obviously many colors in skin, and people. There's a huge what's it called, spectrum. But let's just say that African Americans, that category, were overrepresented in the sprinting group. You could, if you didn't know anything about sprinters and you didn't know that sprinting tends to be dominated by African, I would say, whatever you call it, either African people, Jamaican, people with African blood, that you're going to see that this just fucking is true. Okay, it's just like they're going to win, right? It's just the way it is, right? There are random winners. There was a Japanese guy that was very fast for a while. I forget his name, but he was like coming up and strong, but then he had some injuries. There was a Chinese guy. Every once in a while, there's a white guy. But let's face it, fuck. I mean, at some point, you just have to accept reality that this just tends to be something that Africans are better at. Right? People with African blood, African history, whatever you call it. And it's okay, fine, right? This is a good thing. This is good for America, because then we get more gold medals. And then in different sports, different people are fucking good at things, right? It's just the way it is, right? It's like, God, I don't understand. I mean, how far into denial do people want to get? Like, the NBA, I mean, come on. Like, we just say, okay, for diversity, we're just going to randomly switch people on our 100-meter sprint, it's going to change. You're going to bring in a bunch of white guys, because that's fair. It's 50% white guys, America. So we think that this is chose on racism. But anybody who knows about sprinting knows that there's a thing called a timer, right? And you can see how fast it takes for the guy to go from one line to the other. And if that time is faster, then he wins and gets awards, right? It's basic stuff, right? So you have to base the team on that, not based on something else, right? So business, although it doesn't seem like it kind of is the same. I mean, people are chosen for a reason, guys. And when you change those people, man, things change. They really, really change. And so when you see a board change, like in the Olympus scandal in Japan, okay, there's this huge scandal in Japan, and you see many accounting scandals, like at Enron and stuff like that. Now, when board members change, whole groups of people leave, okay, because they were there, just like my example from Walmart online sales, they were there based on the fact that they thought, hey, this is going to happen eventually. Our company's going to go this way. And then, so when a board member is dismissed, everything that he represents is dismissed. All his history, all his, these guys are not from the outside. These guys have relationships with people inside the company. So the guy who's head of R&D knows the guy. The guy who's head of distribution knows the guy or woman, right? They work together. They trust the person, right? And so when that person leaves, they lose a friend. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on with these board members. One is they represent a certain mindset, right? And that's what they try to do with boards. They try to bring in a balanced mindset. And that's the whole thing. It's all about balance to make better decisions. That's the whole point of the board. So if a board was based on racism, I would suspect that company would have trouble making money long term, because they're not basing it on, business, statistics, data, man, fucking data, right? Money, right? That's what they should be based on. And whenever you go off target, you always have business troubles, right? It's just a natural thing, right? So, okay, so let me see here. So Japan had the scandal. When the board changed, everything changed. And a scandal, okay, here's why it affects you. Okay, if you're listening and you consider yourself whatever group you're in, there's even feminists listening to this channel. So you say, well, I don't care. I just want diversity. I think it's good. You know what I mean? Like, and I can understand that. Okay, again, if you've never been, I was invited to attend a board of directors meeting for a very large corporation, one of the largest in the world. And I actually turned it down. But I know, like, the guy that asked me to come attend, he was somebody that I had introduced to that company from my headhunting firm. So I was good friends with him. And he said, I think you'd be a good addition of open-mindedness and out-of-the-box thinking. And I was like, I can say this it was one of the biggest honors of my entire life. I really felt like he appreciated me, like my real myself. When I turned it down. It was a long story. I was on a short trip. I didn't have any like formal clothes. I can't buy clothes in Japan because my body doesn't exactly shape. I would have looked like a clown. I thought, you know what? And I was already with friends, and we were at a resort and having a great time. And I was like, I don't really want to break my whole trip to go up there, Tokyo, and attend this meeting. And also, I questioned in my mind how much difference I was really going to make. My friend was a little frustrated. He was the head of Japan operations. He was frustrated, and I knew there was a lot of complexity going on. And I was thinking, do I really want to go? Now, looking back, I made a huge mistake. I should have gone to that meeting. I would have learned so much. So I'm sorry I couldn't bring that wisdom from actually attending. I've attended board meetings, okay, guys, but I've never been like a board member. I've never been a board member of like a very large corporation. That's where you really learn, like the world's largest corporation. That's where boards really matter. Like, there's no such thing really as a board on a two-man company. People call boards to make them feel important, and I've been invited to board meetings at restaurants and things like that. Guys trying to puff up their kind of like company, But it was a joke. There was no checks and balances. There was no all the things that make transparency. It was a joke. And so the real boards are large corporations, and I made a mistake. But so we have these boards. They make decisions. The CEO, and each board member has a mindset. They have a tribe that kind of adheres to them. So whenever a board member leaves, it's serious shit, man. It is very serious stuff, because sometimes the board member will have. It's not always about money. Always. Let me give you an example. So recently, the CEO of Daimler Chrysler, I think it's still called Benz or whatever, Mercedes-Benz. He basically, that's an easy way to think of it. He left, or he retired, and the new guy came in. And at that time, smart cars, which were designed by Swatch originally. I'm a huge fan of smart cars. They're like a two-man, very cute, very practical for cities in Asia, and a great little. I don't know if they're like what I want for myself, but they are like a great design try that brings ideas to designers and helps us to move forward in my mind, whether or not they're profitable. Smart cars were a huge step in future design of automobiles, and a really important step. And so the CEO, the ex-CEO, I forget his name, but he was this all came out when he left, right? When he left, it all came out that actually the smart division loses money. And so, Mercedes, like the new guy took over, he was like, we can't keep losing money on these cars. And then there was the knee-jerk reactionary people who said, oh, you're not serious about electric, because they were going electric and this and that. And it's like, like actually Mercedes is very serious about electric, and this car, as cool as it is, as cute as it is, as much as you want it, it's not really the future anymore. It was, but not anymore. And it's not worth losing this much money on. And that's what they made a decision. The new CEO is like, tough business decision. Okay, these things are tough, you guys. These decisions are really tough because the ex-CEO supported it. I'm sure the ex-CEO is the guy who brought him to power, the new guy, or was somehow mentored him in some way. There was like, you owe people when we get mentored. You know what I mean? Like it's human relations are complex, and successful people understand that. Morons think it's simple, and I plenty of examples of this. not understanding human relations. But either way, the new CEO made the right decision, I think, even though I'm a huge fan of the cars, and he sold it to Geely. So Geely bought Smart Cars, and it all came to light when the CEO changed, right? Because then all of a sudden we found out that basically this other guy, the other CEO, he was, of course they're, mind sticklers for profit and all that, but at the same time he had a soft spot for smart cars. Don't know why, but he had a soft spot, and I think, I guess I think I know why, like the same reason I have a soft spot for them. But in the end, business is business. Times have changed, and Geely was going to use smart cars right now. They were gonna. Their plan is to electrify these suckers, get them in Chinese cities, and build that brand out from the smart design into a whole new brand. And I think that I forget the name of the company. They're creating a whole new company around this. So Geely is a Chinese company. I almost met the CEO's wife of Geely. I was just missed her. She was in the office of my friend's company in Suzhou. And I just missed her. I really wish I would have met her, because the Geely is a really interesting company. They bought Volvo. I can't remember. They bought another a foreign auto manufacturer. Geely is a very interesting company. Geely, Chinese company. But they go under different brand names. It's like the Volkswagen Group, right? They own all different Audi and everything. So either way, so that's how it works, guys. With the CEO, like it's like serious, man. It's like complex, man. It's like. It's not just money, and it's not just people. It's not just support. It's not just politics. It's not just good business. It is good business. In the end, that's what people are all trying to do. Is like that's what everybody's trying to do. Is the best decision long term, including all the complexities of fucking life, which is, as you know, very, very complex. Taking everything into consideration, what's the best decision, right? And that's what it's all about. That's what's going on here. So I want to say this. There's a great book called Snakes and Suits by Robert Hare, Dr. Robert Hare, and it is a great book. And it's about psychopathic people who work in companies. And it goes in specifically about how one malignant person can really sabotage so much good in a company. It can really, really take a company down. And I think it's even bigger than that. I think a company, like a bad board member and a bad, like a bad seat in a company, can even affect a whole country's wealth. And this is where it affects you. Okay, I just give you one example real quick. Toyota Motor Corp made the very first hybrid, right, with the Prius. And my friend bought the very first one. I remember, I forgot what year it was, maybe like 91, 92. He bought it in Tokyo. I remember driving around Harajuku and being blown away because it was silent, when you take off, like absolutely silent. It's the first hybrid. I was like, wow, this is amazing, But Toyota was very slow to go electric. And I think this was a huge mistake. I think this was a very, very big mistake. And whatever you think about it doesn't, I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying anybody's wrong. I'm just saying, like, they had the lead. Okay, they had the battery technology, they had the brand name, they had the eco-friendly kind of mode, which is not why I like electric cars, by the way. Not because of eco stuff. I like electric cars because of technology, and I think it is actually the future. Just like I don't want a diesel-powered iPhone, with belching smoke in my house. I don't want a diesel-powered car or gasoline power. I want electric. I think electric keeps the cities better. And even though there is pollution, obviously, in creating electricity, and I know the complexity, and there's arguments either way, but that's my opinion. So I was going to say, God, I lost my train of thought. Okay. Bad actors cost companies a lot. Okay. So when a person, and in countries, that's what I was going to say, is Toyota didn't jump on the electric thing, and they jumped on the hydrogen thing. Now, you can say jump on, but they hired a bazillion hydrogen guys. They built whole divisions focused on fucking hydrogen. They had a plan for the Olympics in Tokyo next year. Was it 21? I think it is. Either way, it's like hydrogen. It's hydrogen economy. was the kind of the I think it's called Japan hydrogen economy or something. They have like a name for it, and they were going to unveil it in Tokyo. But now they're having second thoughts because electric is really going crazy. Nobody wants hydrogen. Consumers don't want hydrogen. So whether it's better or not, consumers are buying electric. So in the end, you got to listen to consumers. Even if the engineers all agree that fucking hydrogen is better, if the consumers don't buy it, you can't make it. And you can't make a profit. And it will kill your company. So just like people buy Lady Gaga CDs. And you know what I mean? Like you could argue all day that there's better music, than Madonna or any like major, famous person. And you could say, this is illogical. They should not buy this. We should produce better music because it's better. And any educated person would say that. But in the end, like, who buys it, right? Do they buy it? If your business is successful, it gives you a lot of benefits, right? And then you can do the things you really want to do. So if you really believe in something like good music and quality music, and you think, this is quality music, X, Y is quality, you can get the money and the resources to create that very thing that you think is so important. And that's why you have to listen to the consumer. You really have to listen, because in the end, if you don't listen to the consumer, it's extremely painful. And in Toyota's case, not listening to, I would say, global voices. I think this is my prediction. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen. And the viability of this whole concept in the podcast, this episode, is not based on whether I'm right or wrong, guys. Okay, because there's many examples of companies that were wrong and many examples of companies that were right. It's just showing you the mechanisms, how this stuff works. Like, okay, so let's just say that Toyota is wrong about hydrogen, and I think they are, and they've wasted a lot. Okay, this is without a doubt. They wasted their leadership in the eco kind of mindset. Toyota was the leader, and now Tesla's the leader, and Toyota is like not even on the radar anymore. Like, they really blew it. They really, really blew it. Now, I'm not saying they couldn't come back. If hydrogen ended up being so awesome and so easy, and like hydrogens, like everything went hydrogen, Toyota would be, again, there'd be revival of that whole thing. It'd be like they were right all along, and Tesla was boneheads, and we see like, Toyota's that savior, it would all change, right? But it's not looking that way. It's looking like hydrogen's kind of a dud, even though it's very cool technology, and I like hydrogen, but it's just looking like it's just too complex. There's too many moving parts in hydrogen vehicle, and there's too much loss of energy, whereas a battery to an engine, a motor, to a wheel is much more. There's less loss there of energy, and so there's a lot of reasons why. But in the end, consumers don't like them, so it's not looking good for Toyota's massive investment in that technology, and so we're seeing that maybe this was a huge decision. Now, how does this affect everything? Because the board made these decisions. The board in Japan made these decisions. And now it's not just in Japan. Like, obviously, there's global voices in Toyota. Toyota is an amazing company. I'm a huge fan of Toyota. But I just think that there's something happened here. Like, the Japanese consumer did not want electric. So they wanted, the Japanese consumers did not want what they called plug-in electrics, plug-in cars. Japanese consumer wanted a gas motor with an electric, and that's what they wanted, and they're not changing even now. Japanese consumer wants that. The problem is the global voice, or the global kind of mood, is not the same as Japan. Sometimes they are the same. Sometimes Japan is the absolute leader and absolutely clairvoyant in the future, but this time wasn't the case. And a lot of people want electric right now. And they're hoping there's like a new battery they can charge up in 15 minutes, and there's all these, that will change the game with electric, so you don't have to, you're not worried about range anxiety. And there is like technology that could make this happen, right? And might not too, right? Realistically, might not too. So we don't know where it's going to end, but this is the debate that is necessary to succeed in this fucking world, okay? This is the debate. It's not about right or wrong. It's the debate that needs to happen. And then in the end, there's a vote, okay? Who's right, who's wrong, the vote, and then the board votes. and then they make a decision to go in a direction. And so if, just to finish my thought on Toyota, if Toyota's wrong, okay, and hydrogen was wrong, they wasted tons of money, they wasted their leadership, they wasted a lot of their brand name even that they built up, because that's the most valuable thing a company like Toyota has. Just like same with Coca-Cola. If you look on their balance sheet, it's the brand is more valuable than any of the trucks or the manufacturing facilities, right? So the brand Toyota takes a major hit as a hydrogen company, which is, that's not got the right now, it's not the cachet, right? So if that happens, what's going to happen to Japan? It's not just the company. So the board members are not just replaceable morons that are overpaid scoundrels. They are intelligent people fighting it out to the every last millimeter of yards, okay? And or of meters, right? Millimeter, yards. So I used to live in Asia. But you get it. Like it's a very competitive landscape. It's a very brutal competitive landscape, just like qualifying for the U.S. Olympic team. Okay, it's very, very competitive, and there's a lot of factors, and it's very complex. And I want to add one thing. I'm not saying that everybody that wants to change board member doesn't understand the complexity of boards. There's probably some people who are very experienced with boards who would disagree with me, which is fine, and I would love to hear their voice. Somebody who understands how companies are run and says, no, I think this, and that's great. That's another voice that will teach me something. It'll either teach me, new good ideas or mindsets of other people and like give me ideas about how to help people, or it will give me, like I said, a whole new watershed moment where I say, oh my gosh, I was completely wrong, right? That's what debate's all about. And that's why I don't like the current mood where you can't debate things. You can't debate race. You can't debate politics without getting attacked. You can't debate things anymore. It's like terrible, right? Well, businesses are one of the last areas where it is pretty equal. People fight it out for these things. And I'm glad about that. I'm fucking happy about that. I love that. And so if Toyota's wrong, okay, and if they lost their lead, and if they lose their investment, and if a lot of Japanese engineers who were studying in school went to hydrogen instead of electric, instead of batteries, and all those young people get screwed, if that is the case, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen is a major shift from Japan, a major shift, because this is not a small thing. Japan is the largest corporation. I believe in Japan. Either way, it's the most influential. Toyota is called Toyota Bank in Japanese because it has so much money and so much power. Whole cities, regions are dependent on Toyota, including like the Chugoku region where Nagoya city is, and all along the coast in Japan, all over the place, Tokyo, everywhere. Toyota is more like a brand, like Apple. And there are OEM small manufacturers in Japan who make this is one thing very interesting about Japan, quick side note, is that the big brand names like Toyota, Hitachi, not that many people work for them. Actually, they work for small manufacturers who make a certain part for them. And they are not paid the same, they're not protected the same. They don't, like when technology shifts, it's more brutal. The Japanese employment market is fucking brutal, man. I know it very well because I obviously worked in it, and I hired people in management in Japan, and I listened to them. I talked to them. I talked to over 3,000 of Japan's top executives. I had coffee with them. It wasn't like I saw them speak at a fucking event. I sat down. I know these guys. I can call them up. Like they know my name. Like I can call them up and say, "Hey, how's it going? What are you guys doing?" And he'll say, "Oh, I can't talk now. Talk later," because these guys, these executives, they always want to know somebody like me. Because why? Not because of Ronin, man. Because they know that I understand how management works, and I understand who's hiring and what's hiring. Like, even though I'm not doing it anymore, I get it. And my friends will call me and tell me, "Hey, we're doing this new division. Do you want to do it? Whatever." And I'll say, "I'm not hitting it anymore." But I find out, I get information. A lot of my friends are still doing it. So I'm in the middle of things. So sometimes people in the quote unquote positions of power call me and say, "Hey, get me a job." And I'm like, "I don't do it anymore." He's like, yeah, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I know you still do. You still know what's going on. Just tell me. Like, I need some help here. I need my career, this has happened, that's happened. And And I was a very successful recruiter, so they know that I can do it again. They know I can just pick it up anytime I want. So they're like, look, I need this, or whatever. So just help me out here. And I'm always like, no, I really don't want to do it anymore. And they're like, it's like, okay, they give up. It's not like there's other guys who are talented too in recruiting, right? So, but either way, I had a relationship with them, and I helped them get a job and everything. And it was really enjoyable. I loved it, man. I tell you, man, head hunting was like, I felt like, that book, what is it? Was it How to Friends? No, it's Dale Carnegie book where he interviews all of the successful people of the time, or many successful people, and then he brings the all the wisdom into his book. I feel like as a headhunter, you really get a modern version of Napoleon Hill. You get the honest truth when you interview somebody. When you interview a CEO as a headhunter who has the capacity to get him a new position that would change his career, that guy tells you the truth, and he has to. That's another thing. A lot of people don't fucking understand these positions of power. I'll tell you one thing, is these guys are honest, and these guys they got their shit wired tight. They don't talk like I do on this podcast. They don't use bad words. They're very careful, but they also tend to be, the people that rise to the top in business tend to be funny, they tend to be balanced, they tend to be just everything that's good about a man. They tend to be like good fathers. Now, I'm not saying every guy is, but you rise to the top based on stuff, man. It's this idea that these guys are randomly rising to the top and that anybody can do it if they just have a certain skin color. This is insanity, guys. You got to get this out of your mind. Like, it is so difficult for me to find somebody to replace a top person because the complexities. And I have to understand the man at the deepest level. And I have to understand the way the company operates. And I have to understand the technology. And understand where the company's going. And I have to understand their debt situation. I have to understand, like regulatory situations, so that I can present something that's attractive, matches that guy exactly, because you can't waste these guys' time. My kind of, what I say, my expertise was that I could figure it out in advance, and I could call a guy and say, look, I got something I think is interesting for you. And the guy would say, you better not waste my time, right? And I'll be like, I've thought about it. I really hope I'm not, but I think I got something for you. And then he's like, give me a hint. And I'll say, blah. And then he's like, okay, I'll meet you. And then I would meet him, and then he'd be like, interesting, but no. And then that would solidify my relationship with the guy, because it's like, it's kind of like you're shooting at a target, right? I mean, I don't hunt or anything, but let's just say you're shooting a bird, right? You come very close, and then people are like, ooh, that guy's pretty good. He's going to hit it pretty soon, right? So when I come up with something good without, wasting anybody's time, executives are like, okay, that's the kind of recruiter I want to work with, because he understands me. He understands the market, and he does it very quickly and very surgical. Boom. Here's the idea. And he knew that what I was saying was the truth, right? He didn't doubt anything like, oh, maybe that position doesn't exist, or maybe it's not really like that. I had done my homework every time I presented to a top guy, and that's why I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed all that stuff. I enjoyed all the complexity. And when I see people saying, let's just change the fucking board, they're like Lego pieces, let's take the red piece out, let's put the black piece in there. These guys do not understand the complexity, because if Toyota, the board members chose to go hydrogen, and if that doesn't prove to be the right bet, and if they stay on the wrong road long enough, there could be even a potential for Toyota to go bankrupt or to have serious financial difficulties, because investing in new technology is no joke, guys. It's not just a number on paper. You're taking money out of someone's pocket, you're putting in someone else, and then when you make these bad decisions, when you hire the board members that don't have friends, that don't know the technology, what happens is talented people leave. Every time you make a mistake, talented people leave your company. That's the problem with companies. People that are retards, lame guys, they will stay in a company till it finally goes bankrupt, because they don't care. They get their salary, they don't care. Talented people will say, this company's on the wrong road. I don't want to be here. I know the future is online. I know the future is whatever. And whether they're right or wrong, they make a decision. Talented people, not always right, but they're like, I studied this. I believe in this. I don't believe in that. That's old. That's not going to work. That's working less every year. I can see the numbers. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be in a company that does that. And good, talented people leave. And I'll tell you, it's not just based on gender. it's often based on other factors. And one thing I saw in Japan, one of the biggest mistakes Japan made, was that companies give basically new positions based on seniority. They promote based on seniority. And seniority means basically like young people and new technology doesn't get into Japanese companies as quick as it should, because older guys don't know the internet. They don't know the same level. They don't know the new apps. They don't know what's going on. Now, they can be very valuable. And that's why a balance, like having someone like Warren Buffett on your board is so valuable, is because people like that can bring in wisdom and other aspects. But you also want your board to have other mindsets and other viewpoints. And the needs of a company are so complex now that it's almost to the point where, like when I joined, I worked in Silicon Valley raising money successfully on Sand Hill 4 Company, and very, very fun. The company ended up failing, and the reason is because we got the funding through a friend of mine, and it was like a miracle. I'm very proud of it. It was very cool. We actually he sat down, he said, look, if what you're saying is true, we got the money lined up for you. And he said, all I want is a prototype, and then this amount of money we're going to invest. And that was massive, because it was a famous venture capital company, and it was real money, and it was what we needed. And so the job then went to the programmers. There was one main programmer in our company who had the largest share of stock, okay? And he had already been allocated, and his job was because this was a technology company, and he was an important part. In other companies, like a programmer would never get more than the CEO, but in this company I was working with this team, technology was the most important aspect. And so we needed that most. But because none of the other people, including the investors that we had until then, including the other people that we brought in, my job was partly to raise money. Actually, it was the CEO's job. I did it for him. But my job was to take the company global to Asia, because they had a plan to quickly expand globally. That was my job as a COO. Sorry. But what happened was, once we got that investment on the table, okay, we got a written guarantee that if this happens, this will happen. Once we got that was what we were looking for. Then we just looked at the program and like, get it done. Like it's done. Like we worked so hard. Now we just got to make the prototype. We're done. We're going to go on to the top. You know what happened? Was the program was full of it. He couldn't do it. He was lying. He was exaggerating his skills. And when it came down to it, he did not have the capacity to understand what we were doing completely. And once he did, he couldn't do it. But he wouldn't give up his shares. So the company folded, simply because of that one reason. So the reason why I tell that story is because the complexity and the the way that work is these days is that everybody has different skills that are so unrelated that you don't even have an ability to really, specialization is the word I'm looking for. Specialization is so extreme now that even if you're really smart, you don't really have any way to know, pedal to the metal, all the way down, can this guy do it? Because often it's something that's never been done. The prototype he had to make had never been done. And so, we relied on him to know what needed to be done. And we gave him the largest share of the company's stock, for God's sake, but he didn't know. And once he knew, he's like, can't do it, And so the company failed. So what I learned from that was that specialization is so intense now that you need to trust the person. So the character of a man or a woman is the most important thing in a board, because you have to trust them that they know what they're doing, because your specialization is so different than them. And you just have to say, okay, you give the ball to Kevin Durant and you say, look, get her done. There's 3 seconds left. We need 3 points to win. You don't even have to tell him that. You get her done. And he gets her done. There's no way to prove he's going to get it done. He might not get it done that time, right? That's how business is. That's how sports, that's how life is. But guys, you trust that this guy not only has the talent to do this in general, but under this enormous pressure. So under this unique situation, This guy has the capacity to get her done. Okay? It's a very different person than a person that can do that same move when nobody's watching, when there's no pressure, right? It's not just the talent. It's also the ability to face pressure and the specific pressure that you're under in that circumstance. And the defenders, there's so many complexity, right? But in the end, nobody knows, but he's like, give me the ball. He's like, give me the ball. And the coach is like, all right, here's where I was going to go. Boom. And then they give him the ball. Same with any closer, right? They're not always the best guy, but somehow they have a way under pressure of getting it fucking done. And there's like, Robert Horry is one of these guys. He just Robert Horry was like invisible all year. And then it was like down to like 0.5 seconds. You had to win the game. And then Robert Horry basically was doing, not really, but he was invisible all year. And then you're throw it to Robert, boom, another championship. And he did it over and over again. And I don't know why. That guy had that. Whatever the hell you call it. Robert Horry had that skill. And what a weird guy to have it. But you have to know these things. And this is the level of pressure and complexity that a company faces. These people are not randomly chosen by there's not some KKK meeting deciding who is going to be on the board of directors of Google. Okay? This is not how people are chosen. Okay? You got to get that out of your head. It's nonsense. It is total nonsense. At the same time, I'm not saying that humans are not fallible. Humans are fallible, right? And they are racist. And you'll see it, not just in America, but you see it in China. You'll see it in Japan. You'll see it in Africa. All over the world, humans have emotions, and they have fears, and they have weaknesses. And these weaknesses are universal all over the place. So I'm not saying that these don't exist. Don't worry about it. We shouldn't even pay any attention to any of this stuff. None of this is important. I'm saying that people earn their positions, and you gotta let them do it, because if you don't, if Toyota fails, okay, let's just say Toyota, the worst case scenario. Again, I'm not saying it happened, but if it did, you're gonna see all those small companies that depend on Toyota, the mouths that need to be fed by Toyota sales, they're all gonna go bankrupt, and all those families, all those guys in Japan, and all the people that rely on them, so the restaurants nearby, the tax revenue for the cities, the things that they would buy, all the consumer goods that they would buy, the real estate, everything goes down. And I think this is what's going to happen, because every once in a while there's a big shift, right? And whenever there's a shift of something as deep as a drivetrain, right, from internal combustion engine to electric, you see, or hydrogen or whatever, you see a huge opportunity, right? And I think China has the combination of ride-sharing knowledge. They have the largest ride-sharing company in the world with Didi Chuxing, and Uber has a stake in it. And they have the knowledge of non-ownership, shared ownership. They have the latest knowledge of this stuff. Japan has no ride-sharing companies. They don't have any knowledge of the data that goes with that. I shouldn't say any, but I mean, they don't lead in this. China and the US lead. And especially Didi Chuxing does I don't know, it's 3 or 4 times what daily rides they do 3 or 4 times, and maybe even more. Either way, it's multiples of what Uber does every single day. Those rides are serious. They give you data. Those data is like wood in a fire. They're fuel. They're important. Okay, that data. China has the data, and they also have a lead in the government pushing the whole country towards electric because of their pollution problem, their unique situation. So all things said and done, China also has one big advantage, one huge advantage. They have a very flexible population. It's very common to see in China a guy who's 60, 80 years old texting his grandson or using an app. I don't know why Chinese are like this, but it is a fucking fact. I've seen it a million times. Chinese people are just more open-minded. They just try shit easier. I swear, my grandfather, same meal. I love him. He was the best. Walter, tears in heaven. I love that guy. But same food every day. Same clothes every day. But my Chinese friends, their grandfathers were they're trying apps. They were on WeChat. They were sending money. They were all kinds of stuff, man. I was whoa. And I go back to America. I was Stone Age is with the old people, I was blown away. I was no way. And then I saw it wasn't just apps, it was clothing, it was trying new food. Like older people in China were very likely to try like a dish from South Pacific or whatever. They just like, hey, let's try this new dish. I don't know why they're like that. I mean, maybe it's because of the history of China. I don't know. Maybe it's because of the changes in the Cultural Revolution. I don't know. All I know is it's real to me. I think it's real, and I've seen it, and I've seen Chinese adapt quicker to things, and I'm very impressed. I think it's great. Americans, I find them to be very slow. Older people, like really slow about change, and I think this affects the companies. This affects everything. Okay, and so we have a very update, compliant population who tries things. We have a government steering. We have data. We have new knowledge based on apps and like new needs and consumers have. And then we finally have manufacturing capacity out the yin yang, right? China's got the capacity to make stuff. Why did the U.S. win World War II? Then they didn't really win. I mean, the Russians did a lot of the damage to the Germans, no doubt about it. Most divisions in World War II were destroyed by the Russians, not the Americans, not the British, not the pilots. But still, American support was absolutely key in turning the war tide and winning the war. Why were Americans so powerful? Because they had the manufacturing base. They had the manufacturing skills. They had Rosie the Riveter. They had guys. They had people producing stuff that was used in war: bombs, planes, wings. Food. The all the things that needed a war machine needed. China now is like that. That's the biggest fear I have of any kind of world war, is that China now has everything that the U.S. had in World War II. That no one really, I don't think people really understand that industrial manufacturing capacity wins wars. And China has that. They fucking have that, And they also have the capacity to make electric cars or any technology that wins, that consumers want. And so the Chinese are very, very quickly making electric cars, competing in the electric business, and they're forcing governments to buy electric buses, and that also pushes along technology. Sometimes government intervention is bad, often, usually, but sometimes it's very good. The internet was developed by the U.S. government, and the internet is the probably game changer in our time. Satellites, U.S. government, right? These things were created by government. Everybody talks government's so bad, government doesn't do anything. Hey, what about the fucking internet? What about the fucking internet? That is government. There is no way you can look at it any other way. It all started from the government. Government-sponsored universities, government-sponsored research, and eventually once it got big enough, then it went to the consumers, then it went to everybody else, and now we have what we have. Same thing with satellites, right? Space travel was government. So it's not as clear as people say, like, hey, do you believe in communism and government, or do you believe in companies and free market, or do you believe in social? It's all mixed up. This is the problem with life, guys. This is why this episode's so long. Fucking life is complex, man. And and intelligent people can handle this complexity. So I hope I've kind of presented an idea of why it's such a bad idea to think of board members as Lego pieces. And the last thing I'm going to say is that the guys that earn it and the girls that earn it, they deserve it. They just fucking deserve it. If you earn a place on the U.S. 100-meter sprint team, you deserve it. Now maybe they could switch you with somebody else, and then there would be no difference in the medals, right? But is that even right? You earn that place. Guys on board members, girls on board members, minorities on board members that earn their way in there, they earned it, and it takes time to digest new things. Like this is my take. You see women that came into the workforce in a big way starting after World War II, but really the big push was more, or not push, but the big trend was more in the 70s and 80s when women came in. And I think that over time you will see more and more females in boards. And again, I'm all for that. I think it's good. And you know what? I should end on one last note. I met the president of a company called Recruit in Japan, and she's female, and all their management's female. They were famous for, like, everybody's female. and in positions of power, and I was doing recruiting for her. And we met in her office. It was really a special day. It was really cool. And I noticed everybody was female. Like even the girl who brings the tea is female. Like I thought maybe they would have a guy take the tea just kind of as a reversal of roles. Nope. And I'm not sure everybody wasn't female back then, and I'm sure I don't know what it's like now. Recruit probably changed a lot, whatever. The time I was there, the day I was there. And I talked to the CEO about what she wanted and what she needed and what she was planning in her expansion. And it was pretty obvious to me that in this business, their main customers were females, temp workers, and she understood the market better than anybody else. And it's actually a conglomerate that has a lot of business, but they tend to focus on things that are women, products for women, services for women. And I could just see very quickly that my candidates, if I was going to succeed in this placement with her, this opportunity, I needed to understand her consumers and her needs. And her need was for a woman, right? And that was fine because I could see that a guy just doesn't understand certain things. It's more difficult for guys to understand certain things. It's more difficult for women to understand certain things, right? Not that it couldn't happen, and sometimes innovation comes from outside. So I will add that. A woman might come up with the latest condom. A man invented the maxi pad, the first feminine hygiene product was by a man. So it can happen from the outside, but often it comes from the inside. Because there's greater understanding of needs and more friends talking about it. There's more understanding, and then the knowledge comes. And then now the person that invented it doesn't always get credit, as you saw in that great series Mad Men. There was a few instances where I forget his name, the main guy. What was his name? God, he was so memorable. But either way, his wife had some ideas that ended up being part of marketing, and from a female perspective, they were very successful. So, it doesn't. The person that gets the credit isn't always the one that did it. That's another thing. And it's not always women getting screwed. It's sometimes men. It's sometimes all kinds of people. That is the randomness that business is. It's so brutal. Business. People don't realize, man. These people that deserve these, that worked so hard to get these positions, like, man, it's a jungle out there. It is very competitive. Man, it's tough. Business is tough, and even if you're successful for a while, like Toyota, you can lose it all, man. You can lose it all. It's a rough world out there, and I think that considering leadership positions as Lego things to be replaced without really a moment's thought is a very, very big mistake. And I don't know what the answer is, because I am pro different voices. I do, like I said, I've spent my life overseas, hearing different voices, seeing different voices, meeting different people, understanding. And I love it. I love the complexity of life. I love the complexity of the jungle, of wild plants, of watching the kind of, whether you believe in evolution or not, but the evolution of an ecosystem, right? Even an ego. I'm very interested in all that stuff. I love it. And I love to see new ideas come from the outside. Sometimes I'll have an idea for a business that is very old school, and I'll say from the outside, they should do this, they should do that. And then whenever I see innovation, I fucking love it. I love the innovation you're seeing in pickups recently. You're seeing a lot of new innovation in the beds of trucks, four-seaters and stuff. Things that didn't have a lot of innovation before. I fucking love innovation. I love ideas. I love patents. I love creation. I love invention. And if whoever it comes from, to me, I could give a shit who comes up with it. It could be a little kid. It could be a 3-year-old girl. It's innovation comes from everywhere, and that's what I'll end on is that in order to improve yourself, to create the best life that you can, you really need to open yourself up and open your mind up to everything that's around you, every idea, every voice, and then from those voices you're going to be surprised. Like, no matter how many times somebody's wrong, they're going to be right, and you'll be like, damn, like, I didn't want to think about that. I didn't want to accept that person could be right, but man, they are so right. And this this is your gold as a mature, wise man. That capacity, that understanding, that education, that open-mindedness. That's where it's at, guys. That's where it's at. Not simple black and white on either side. Doesn't matter which side, it's all the same to me. Complex debate, understanding of all the aspects of a decision, right? Why it was made, how it plays out, all these things. And then combining everything. That's what makes it fun for me. That's why I love to learn Chinese. That's why I love to learn Japanese. That's why I love difficult, like incredibly complex things. You know, I'm interested in anything like that, like weather systems, you know. It's like, whoa, you know, like all this stuff, you know, like I want to know, right? So either way, all right, guys, I hope you guys have a great day. And I hope that sheds some light on the whole concept of randomly changing important ecosystems that have developed over hundreds of years that protect us. I hope you understand that if Toyota makes a mistake, a lot of innocent people will lose their jobs because of a lack of wisdom or letting in new voices or open-mindedness or understanding or whatever it is, that there are real consequences. So it's in everybody's benefit that we debate this at the deepest level, not at the reactionary level. So whether you agree with what I said or you don't agree, I hope that this can lead, and I really hope this, to even a deeper discussion and an understanding of fairness and simplicity and success. Because that's what it's, in the end, those things all very important. And I applaud people that try stuff, but I also want to warn that when you're wrong, you gotta fucking admit it. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay. For me, for you, anytime, anywhere. It's okay to be wrong. But just be ready to say, you know what? I was wrong. Sorry, guys. All right. That's it. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Ronin Man signing off. I fucking love this stuff. I can't wait to meet you guys at the World Summit. And I look forward to hearing what you guys have to say on this topic. All right, guys. Signing off.